The current situation of tension between Afghanistan and Pakistan is not merely limited to border clashes or diplomatic statements. Rather, it is a historical, ideological, and geographical knot whose roots extend from the Durand Line of 1893 to today's changing scenario, where grave mutual mistrust, strategic interests, and the requirements of internal security have become so intertwined that ignoring any one aspect would be tantamount to distorting the entire picture. Or the Afghan Taliban maintained the same hostility toward Pakistan that various governments of Afghanistan had expressed in the past, and which is embedded in that boundary line drawn even before the establishment of Pakistan, a line that the Afghan government never wholeheartedly accepted. After the creation of Pakistan, Afghanistan not only hesitated to recognize Pakistan's existence, but also opposed Pakistan's membership in the United Nations in 1947, indicative of the same mindset. In contrast, support for the Pashtunistan movement, patronage of separatist narratives in the border areas, and efforts to keep Pakistan's western region unstable continued in a consistent manner. It is a historical fact that Pakistan hosted the Afghan Taliban for decades, attempted to bring them out of global diplomatic isolation after the assumption of their government, and provided assistance during the Doha Agreement, in the hope that when a Taliban government was established in Afghanistan, it would at least not adopt the same old hostile approach toward Pakistan that had characterized previous governments. However, the manner in which the scenario took shape after 2021 gradually nullified those expectations. Although the Afghan Taliban justified their stance by arguing that Pakistan in the past took certain steps in pursuit of its own interests that caused the Taliban harm rather than benefit, this claim cannot change the reality that relations between states are not based on emotions or gratitude, but on mutual interests and international obligations. In this context, when Pakistan began the process of fencing the Pak-Afghan border to prevent cross-border infiltration and terrorism, strong reservations and in some places resistance were witnessed from the Afghan side, which further widened the gulf of mistrust. The situation began to take a serious turn when the Afghan Taliban not only provided safe havens on Afghan soil to TTP, but also practically facilitated them in organizing, receiving training, and carrying out operations against Pakistan. As a result, incidents of terrorism continued to occur one after another in Pakistan, in which, along with the martyrdom of officers and soldiers of the security forces, the civilian population was also targeted. Just a few days ago, an attack on a mosque in the federal capital of Pakistan and suicide blasts across KPK, along with tragedies during the month of Ramadan, filled the measure of national patience to the brim. According to Pakistan, it possessed irrefutable evidence that these operations were carried out by external elements at the behest of their leadership and handlers present in Afghanistan, while responsibility for these attacks was also claimed by various groups, including the TTP and ISIS-Khorasan. In such a situation, when the Taliban government was repeatedly informed at the diplomatic level to fulfill its responsibility under the Doha Agreement and prevent Afghan soil from being used against Pakistan, yet no concrete and verifiable action emerged. Pakistan was left with no effective option other than a retaliatory operation. Pakistan targeted with great precision and caution key terrorist hideouts in Paktika, Nangarhar, and Jalalabad on the night before the 22nd of February. As a result of the jet aircraft operation, the infrastructure of the militants was destroyed, and according to reports, several terrorists, including a Taliban commander, were killed. This action was not an expression of aggressive intentions, but was considered an unavoidable measure by the state of Pakistan for the protection of the lives and property of its citizens, adopted after prolonged diplomatic warnings and alerts. The Afghan government raised an outcry that children and elderly people were also present at the locations targeted and that these were centers of religious education. However, Pakistan's position is that the operation was conducted entirely on the basis of intelligence and that its target was only terrorist camps and related installations. It is also noteworthy here that multiple reports of the United Nations monitoring team have already pointed out the presence of more than 20 terrorist groups in Afghanistan, while American intelligence reports have reiterated the same concern, describing this issue not merely as a bilateral dispute but as a broader regional threat. The Doha Agreement, under which the Afghan interim government had assured that Afghan soil would not be used for terrorism against any country, has now practically become a question mark. If the Taliban government is neither able to control these elements nor taking effective action against them, this situation has also become a matter of concern for the international community. Pakistan not only held negotiations through the mediation of friendly countries, but even offered that if Afghanistan lacked capacity, Pakistan was ready to provide military assistance for joint action. However, this offer was not taken seriously. With a heavy heart, Pakistan reached the conclusion that further ignoring the threats to internal security would amount to a deviation from state responsibility. Although the Afghan people are bound to Pakistan through deep religious, cultural, and historical ties, and the effects of any military tension may impact the people living in border areas, the foremost priority for the state is the protection of its citizens, which takes precedence over any diplomatic expediency. Now, there is a fear that if the Taliban government does not review its policies and does not take decisive action against terrorist groups in accordance with the spirit of the Doha Agreement, the international community may also adopt a strict stance. History bears witness that Afghanistan has remained a field for the adventures of global powers, and if this happens once again, its effects will not only impact Afghanistan but the entire region. The people of Pakistan certainly do not desire any new intervention or confrontation, but they also cannot tolerate that their land and citizens continue to be targeted by terrorism. Therefore, the current situation stands at a decisive turning point, where the Afghan Taliban will have to decide whether they will, as a responsible state, uphold international agreements and take genuine measures against terrorism, or adopt the course of the past and once again push the region into the quagmire of instability. The measure of Pakistan's patience has been filled to the brim, and the nations of the world also seek real action from the Afghan Taliban. Now, the decision lies with the Taliban government as to which direction it chooses at this turning point in history.